It just feels like I'm falling down a rabbit hole. It just feels very dark. It feels like my head is full of white noise.
No motivation to do anything. It totally changes me. It's like Jekyll and Hyde.
Like I'm going through a bereavement, like the bottom's fallen out of my world.
Isolating is a big one because you do spend a lot of time with your own thoughts when you're in that kind of place.
What should be an active, enjoyable part of your life just being taken away.
You're not getting that consistency. It's like you're constantly putting your foot on the ladder and it's slipping off. That's how I always think of it.
These are the voices of women who have the condition Premenstrual Dysphoric Disorder. 1 in 20 women have this hormonal disorder, meaning up to 1 million women in the UK alone could be suffering. And yet, worryingly, hardly anyone knows anything about it. This is PMDD, a vicious cycle.
It's often called like PMS on steroids, so you take any PMS symptoms and amplify them by 1,000.
That was Laura Murphy, who runs the largest PMDD Facebook support group in the UK.
So if you get irritable, you don't just get irritable, your skin crawls with irritability, you can't bear noise, you can't bear people talking to you, you can't bear socialising.
After noticing something was wrong at 17, Laura's late teens and early 20s were marked by debilitating symptoms and emotional turmoil.
Trying different pills, being put on antidepressants, coming off antidepressants. And by the time I left uni, to be honest, I just had no confidence in getting a job. There's no way I could have held down a job with having constant bouts of depression, having constant panic attacks. Work became a real trigger for me. Even the thought of going to work resulted in panic attacks and not being able to get out the front door. No one perhaps picked up on the fact, that I was having such disastrous reactions to contraceptives, that I was having such bad PMS. No one ever put the dots together, when really it's pretty obvious looking back. It really is.
Susie Matthews first realised that what she was experiencing was far more than simply bad PMS after she became a mum for the 3rd time.
I started to notice it was really starting to affect everyday life. I was cancelling appointments for going out and having fun with friends. I didn't want to go to work. It really was starting to get quite noticeable, and certainly for the family as well. They were starting to notice the change in my moods quite a lot. And it was actually a friend of mine that made the link with my cycle and said it does seem to be coming around at that time of the month. I hadn't really noticed the ups and downs of it.
The emotional symptoms of PMDD can be anything from irritability to extreme tearfulness and total self-loathing.
It feels like I'm falling down a rabbit hole. There's all this white noise in my head that I just can't get past. So anybody asking me a question, it's like trying to hear somebody in a crowded room is probably the best way I can describe it. You're in a pub or somewhere noisy and you're going, can you just repeat that, because I can't shut out the background noise, and there is this background noise in my head the whole time.
Physical symptoms can include exhaustion and migraines, and nearly all women with PMDD suffer from depression and anxiety, which can be enough to stop them living normal lives. GP Carolyn Sadler, trustee and research expert for the National Association of Premenstrual Syndrome, says that for many women, getting a diagnosis for their condition is not a simple process.
It's possible that sometimes women will present with psychiatric symptoms and actually it's not really appreciated that those are cyclical, either because somebody doesn't ask them about the menstrual history, or it may be that they've actually got symptoms all the time but they're worse premenstrually, and that's not appreciated or picked up.
The condition is so misunderstood that it is often misdiagnosed as a mental health problem, such as bipolar disorder. Here's Susie again.
If you go in there and you're not really aware of what's happening, you don't really know, you've not necessarily linked it to your cycle, you don't really know yourself very well and what's happening, it must be very difficult for the GP to start trying to untangle all that and work out what is happening with those women. So it probably does take longer to be diagnosed.
Professor Studd, the UK's leading expert of gynecology at Imperial College London, believes that the reason misdiagnosis is rife is because there is still not enough awareness of PMDD's existence in current medical practice.
Well, I think that the science and the treatment of PMS is well worked out. What we need to do is to get the message across to GPs, psychiatrists, and women and sufferers. The trouble is there's a conflict between psychiatrists and and gynecologists, because psychiatrists don't understand the hormonal changes that occur in a woman's cycle.
We contacted the information department at the Royal College of Psychiatrists for a comment. They initially said they did not recognise PMDD, and when pressed they said they could not comment upon this, which comes as no surprise to Laura.
You know, I know people that have gone all through the mental health system and not once have they ever been asked about their cycle or tracking their cycle. These women do the tracking, they do the research, they build themselves up, they think they're finally going to get some help, they're going to get an answer, and they walk into a room with a professional who denies it even exists.
This is what happened to 21-year-old Lorna Berry, another sufferer, when she went to seek help from her GP.
You hear about how doctors are literally, they've got so much to do, they're in and out, and they're just trying to like write you a prescription to get you out, and that was exactly the experience I had.
Lorna's GP prescribed the antidepressant Prozac to fight depression and dismissed the idea that Lorna could be suffering from PMDD.
I don't see a clear route, and that's kind of my main obstacle to overcoming it. I feel like it's still nowhere near as accepted as it should be. Someone who tells you that PMS wasn't a thing when they were around, that's outdated to me. Like, that's an archaic kind of, not a very comforting thing to hear.
Unfortunately, Lorna's experience is all too common.
These problems with severe PMS, which are life-changing for women, can be treated so easily by the correct treatment, but the wrong treatment, which most poor women have, doesn't work.
I mean, it's on the NHS website, and NHS doctors are saying it doesn't exist, which would be fine if it was something quite trivial. I get that, but this is causing, suicides, it's causing family breakups, it's causing people to have their children taken away from them, people to lose their jobs. The consequences of it are potentially huge.
I think one of the worst moments came when I was due out on a night shift. I was very, very stressed about having to go into work, and my son came to give me a hug just as I was about to go to work, and he jumped up by accident and whacked his head, because he was only about 3 at the time, whacked his head into my chin, and I bit my lip, and my tongue, and it started bleeding everywhere. And I just remember standing in the bathroom with this blood pouring out of my mouth into the basin, and normally I'd have been a bit cross and a bit annoyed, but I wouldn't have been too upset. I couldn't stop crying. I was screaming at him, I was screaming at my husband. My other two were really upset because I was screaming at both of them, and I just remember standing there thinking, why am I reacting like this? I would never normally be like that. And then having to ring in sick for work because I had a massive panic attack as well, and I was shaking and I was crying, and I thought, I can't go out and treat other people when I'm like this. It was just horrible. Horrible. Wouldn't want to repeat it, and wouldn't want to wish it on anybody else either.
Susie is one of the lucky few to get successfully diagnosed. She is now having hormone injections every 3 months, but still worries about the impact of PMDD on her career as a frontline paramedic.
The problem with those is that one of the side effects is bone density drops. I had a bone density scan last year, and it showed that the results weren't great. My main worry is that if the results come back really bad this October, will I be able to continue with my job, because I do a lot of heavy lifting at work, and if it comes back that I've got a big problem, then I might suddenly find myself off the road again.
For Laura, her lowest ebb came while she was attempting to convince doctors that her condition was real. Her symptoms also took a huge toll on her relationship at the time.
That level of constant anxiety and depression, it just wouldn't lift. Lots of suicidal ideation. Started losing chunks of my hair, had bald patches, and I'd also get really ragey and really irritable and angry and probably a bit violent. That's a bit embarrassing to say, but if he tried to grab me to calm me down, I tried to push him down the stairs once, which I'm not proud of. Yeah, and not surprisingly, he broke up with me saying that he didn't want to deal with it. And I can understand that now, but it was devastating at the time.
For 15% of sufferers, living with the extremes of this condition can be enough to drive them to commit an act of suicide.
Friends and family mourning the death of Gia Alemont after an apparent suicide attempt in her home in New Orleans.
She suffered severely with PMDD.
4.5 years ago, Gia Alemont, a popular American actress, model and reality television contestant, died following a long battle with PMDD. The Gia Alemont Foundation was set up in her memory. Laura has now started working alongside the foundation to create awareness and educate people about the condition.
My GP doesn't admit it exists, even though I'm under a specialist for it. I have it on paper, that's my diagnosis. She's not interested, she doesn't want to take that on board. It's just not known about. It's not accepted, it's not recognised. The fact that, around 1 in 20 women suffers and it's not recognised by most GPs is kind of terrifying and wrong.
It seems that the first step that must be taken if we are to help those sufferers who have gone unnoticed and undiagnosed is to increase awareness of PMDD. Because if only the condition can be spotted, sufferers can begin to receive the treatment they need.
Do feel that things could improve, and a big step forward would be to increase awareness both among the public and health professionals. It is about assessing that individual, and part of that is assessing the severity and the degree of impact on that woman's life. For example, that their symptoms are put down to depression or anxiety, when actually it's really not rocket science. To diagnose PMS or PMDD, you need a menstrual diary over 2 months, and that can tell you so much about what's happening with that woman's cycle.
Susie is the perfect example of how this could work, with the right conversation about the condition.
I've been very lucky and my GP's been fantastic, and I'm even more grateful now than I probably was at the time, having read of other people's experiences with their GPs. I can look forward now, I can plan ahead. I've applied for a promotion at work, which I would never have done this time a year ago. We can plan holidays away, and there's all sorts of other bits that my own self-confidence has come up, because when you spend 2 weeks every 4 feeling absolutely rock bottom, you spend the next 2 weeks picking yourself up again, ready to crash. You don't get that picking yourself up and keeping yourself up and developing those innate levels of self-confidence that other women seem to walk around with.
Gia Alleman are doing fantastic work, but I think there's definitely work to be made in terms of asking the right questions about cycle. There needs to be policy change, so the information about PMDD is getting down to the bottom of the chain rather than just staying at the top. And I think if there was a charity that could offer counselling for women, that would be amazing.
Even those who still fail to recognise the condition would surely agree that no one should have to suffer in silence. If only these women were listened to, perhaps they would no longer have to suffer alone and could access professional help to alleviate the monthly upheaval that is living with PMDD. That was PMDD, A Vicious Cycle. Written and produced by Alice Watkins. News clips are from ITV, CNN and CBS. Special thanks to Laura Murphy, Susie Matthews, Dr. Carolyn Sadler, Professor John Studd and Lorna Berry. If you think you may be suffering from PMDD, or you think you may know someone who is, you can find more information at either stud.co.uk or by searching PMDD at pms.org.uk.